And the broadcast is now live.
We are live. I was just going to tell everybody. I still got to do it. I'm sorry, Rebecca. So we're here with Vice Mayor Kaplan, and while we're waiting for people to join and know that we're going live, I'm going to tell people on Facebook that we're going to have a little bit of a conversation about what happened at the public safety meeting yesterday. So I'm going to say, hey, y'all, I'm live. Check it out.
See, check out the amazing my council member, Carol Fife, who not only is live right now having this conversation, but is also simultaneously tweeting it and Facebooking it as we're having the conversation. It's such a pleasure to get to serve together with you.
Likewise, I feel like many of the constituents that live in District 3, as well as constituents throughout the city, are feeling really encouraged about the city council right now, feeling that we are moving in the right direction and have the capacity and just power to move in the right direction. So I'm excited about this time. It is a challenging time, but still it is when I really believe we can get things done. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, Vice Mayor Kaplan. We're going to talk about the public safety meeting. There was a lot of confusion. It was my first time chairing a city council meeting. So the committee was, what did I say? It was something else. But I got through it. I'm still here, and I appreciate the support that you were able to provide. And you bring something that's really critical, which is over a decade of experience, right? Mm-hmm. Over a decade of experience in local government. So that also brings just like a wealth of information and historical knowledge. So for the record, can you give us some of that around macro and what your solutions are as someone that's seated in the Public Safety Committee? Tell us a little bit about the history and where things are now.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And how great to get to hang out with you and I know it's this electronic mediated thing, but it's such a pleasure. Yes, so the macro program in Oakland, which is a plan for civilian responders, that we can have civilian responders to things like mental health calls, but other low-level nonviolent calls that sometimes get sent to police with bad results. And so there have been movements throughout the nation, and in fact other parts of the world as well, to provide better, more effective service through trained civilian responders. And so that's something that was done for many, many years in Eugene, Oregon, with a program called Cahoots that's very well respected. And so what happened in Oakland a few years ago is a lot of grassroots community started pushing for Oakland to work to have a civilian responder program. And they brought the Cahoots program from Eugene to our attention as an example. They even brought folks from there to come present, to help advocate for this. And this was a lot of grassroots community groups. APTP was a part of this effort. CPA was a part of this effort. Lots of folks who really care about healthy community response were advocating that we really needed a civilian responder, people who would be effective and available to our community. And so in the previous budget, we fought for money to do the initial program design. And so this is something I advocated for with community, and we put it in my budget. The mayor and the administration opposed it. They said my budget proposal was crazy. They didn't want to entertain this idea of the civilian responders or some of the other things we were working on. And yet it did pass the council, and a lot of community fought for it. So then for many, many months, the administration didn't issue the contract to do the original program design work, and people continued to call and pressure. And so then eventually that got done. Urban Strategies Council got brought in. A ton of community members were involved in that effort. And so now we have an outline of a program called Macro that we are preparing to award the contract to go ahead and start it now in Oakland with those civilian responders. And I think it's a really important way to provide a better and healthier response for our community.
So that brings up a lot for me. I think it brings up the fact that it's what I always say, that the power is with the people. There were grassroots organizations that were pushing for a mental health response to these calls, and it's been tried and true in other cities. And so it was the community that kept pushing. And thank you for actually bringing that to council in spite of being called crazy. I think some of the best ideas that have come through history have been ridiculed and called all kinds of things. So I appreciate that you were able to do that. But it has been stalled. And that's something that I've experienced on the other side, being an organizer, is that once things do get passed, the city of Oakland tends to fall down on implementation. And so I think that's one of the reasons why we always call for community to stay engaged in these processes, so people can know what's going on and know that it's not necessarily the council that's obstructing things from happening. We work with community. And I say we now because I'm on this side, but there have been hardcore city council members over the years that we've worked with that have always tried to support community voice. And that always seems to get slowed down or stalled in some way. And I just want to say that my work, and I know your work on council, is going to amplify the voices of people because, especially around our police budgets and public safety, it's really critical that we get this right. It's super critical that we get this right. So we've been talking about some solutions about what we want to do in Oakland around public safety. We heard over 100 people, over 100 people tuned in last night to a committee meeting, which I thought was huge. But we heard lots of different voices. And I want to be clear for the people who are watching and listening. I am not invested in individuals, in the people who get contracts. I'm just really, really concerned that the right organization gets the contract. And what we found in the city of Oakland is there tend to be little clusters of groups who are favored, who always get contracts. And I was floored to see a tweet by Trash Not Hearing at High Fee Republic today that showed the primary contractor that was set to get this contract yesterday has received $95 million in just 4 years. $95 million. I'm telling you, if you give me $95 million, I will solve all of the world's issues. And clearly I'm being hyperbolic, but come on. And that's supposed to be in the areas of housing, right? Housing services, those types of community services, housing first, rapid rehousing, rental assistance, placements. That is supposed to be the core area of work from this organization. And I have to be honest about the number of calls and emails that I've received about challenging this particular contractor. I don't know them personally. I'm not invested or divested, but I have to do my due diligence in listening to the people who are raising red flags. That is what y'all sent me here to do. And I've heard a lot of those red flags. So I'm saying, let's do our due diligence, but not just about bats. We should also do the same thing about La Familia. I'm not, once again, ask questions, be critical about every penny that we spend with the city of Oakland, particularly right now in this budget crisis. But I also want to go back to Vice Mayor Kaplan and ask, what are some of the solutions that you see to this current budget crisis, and how are we going to get ourselves out of the hole that's been created by unchecked overtime spending and exacerbated by COVID?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've seen some really dangerous and devastating choices being made by this mayoral administration. They issued in December a memo proclaiming cuts that they were making themselves unilaterally without any council input, which, by the way, is pretty unusual of an activity. I mean, the Charter of Oakland says that the city council is the governing board. Our laws say that the city council adopts the budget. So even beyond which specific things they cut, the notion of the administration making major cuts, major funding changes without a public vote, without a public hearing, without council approval is itself a problem in terms of what that does to our democracy and to open government. So not only did the council not get to have a voice, the public didn't get to have a voice because they weren't decided at a public meeting.
That's right.
So first you have the democracy problem, which is pretty big, but then you look at which things they're cutting in this secretive process. And the first thing they lead with is we're gonna, cut a bunch of fire stations. And the memo that the city administrator gave out, which have with me, so that in case we need to talk about it, this is the December 20th memo from the city administrator listing the cuts that the administration, and that means the mayor and the city administrator, the cuts that they are making without any council approval. And they say they are cutting fire services significantly because they say this will be during the low fire season, which is from mid-January through June. There's not a low fire season from mid-January through June in the East Bay in 2021. And we have to be willing to admit the truth about the world in which we live. And even if before global warming 30 years ago, that was maybe almost a little bit true, and even so, not quite. We've had huge fires in May and June, but this year we had record-breaking fires in January.
Right.
So to put out a memo saying, oh, it's okay, it's low fire season, that's just not true. So when we talk about actions that endanger the public safety, these reckless proposed cuts to fire service, and keep in mind, of course, the fire department also responds to medical calls. So people having a heart attack might not get a timely response with those proposed cuts. And so between that and the greater fire risk, a lot of people did speak out about that. A lot of people were very outraged. And then the mayor went on TV and said, well, but we have no choice because there's no other money. So then the next week, I asked the council president, Nikki Bass, big props to her. She's doing a great job. I asked her to appoint me to serve on the Coliseum Authority Board, which she did. And at my very first meeting there in January, I went over the budget and the budget reports in terms of available funds, and confirmed that there were many, many millions of dollars of excess available extra funds there. And so I brought forward a proposal that Oakland should receive back $10 million of our money that is being held by the Coliseum Authority. And that proposal is moving forward to our March 8th finance meeting, and then to use that money to save vital public services, to fund vital public needs, like things that secure our safety, including protecting our fire services and other vital community needs like mental health response.
I think that is what leadership looks like in this time that we're living in, of uncertainty, of insecurity. And I have thanked you before, but I want to say that again publicly, that I am specifically giving you that credit, because what I want to see from our leadership in this moment is that type of tenacity, that kind of thinking, that kind of out of the box creativity that says, where can we get funds from right now? Before, not to say that we will not do some really tough things and make some cuts, but before you do that, do your due diligence before you start just hacking away at things. That was really problematic. So when people were saying thanks to the city of Oakland, I said, no, we got to thank council member and Vice Mayor Rebecca Kaplan, because she went out and found those funds. And if it was this, and I'm challenging the people who watch our city council meetings, who participate, and even our city staff and council colleagues, use precise language. That is how, that is a tactic of confusion when we're saying, thank you, City of Oakland, for finding $10 million and keeping our fire stations open. That's nebulous, and it conflates what's actually happening, and it doesn't credit the people who actually are going to do this work. And it's just a principled thing to do, to acknowledge the people who are going out and doing that. So we're going to stay principled, and we're going to stay very focused and precise when we're engaging in these places, because we just want everything to be clear. And I thought we had a question, but that's from Anna. Yes, that is what leadership looks like. Yeah, we have to lift each other up, and we also have to hold each other accountable too. And I know sometimes I've been told that I am passionate, that I do too much, and I shouldn't be so, I shouldn't fight people so much. But I just want everybody listening to understand that we live in a world that is upside down and inside out. And so in order to fix it, sometimes you got to shake some things. And well-behaved women rarely make history. And we have history to make right now because so many people in our city are hurting. And that not only goes out to our folks in Chinatown, which we have to discuss because we are making the national news about what's happening in Chinatown, but also to the communities who are invisibilized, the communities where gun violence has been high and unacceptable, that don't get press conferences when people are killed and murdered. So it's important that we don't fall into this us versus them kind of thinking that we're seeing all over Reddit and all over Twitter and all over social media that's trying to pit our communities against each other. We love each other and we will organize with each other and we will protect each other. But this outside sentiment of stoking fires that's actually coming from the top down is not okay. There's all kinds of people coming in from from all over California, all over the East Bay into Oakland with this aggressive response that is criminalizing Black folks. And we got to stop that. And our allies have to be vocal about it, because one of the ways microaggressions and macroaggressions have impacted African Americans is to say your pain is irrelevant. My pain is more. And we're not going to get into oppression Olympics about who's hurting more, because under white supremacy, we are all under attack. And unfortunately, melanated people, deeply melanated people, have seen the brunt of those attacks for generations. And we got to tell the truth about that. And our allies have to stand up and say that as well. But Rebecca, do you want to weigh in on what's going on in Chinatown right now?
Absolutely. I think it's so important that we acknowledge and fight the reality of the oppression and absolutely reject the divisive rhetoric that's being done that's intending to distract from the causes of the oppression. Chinatown and Oakland's API community have been subjected to all kinds of totally unacceptable things for decades, almost all of them committed by white supremacists. There were restrictions on where Chinese people and other API people could own property. And then the neighborhoods where Chinese people and other API people were allowed to own property were specifically targeted for things like demolitions and freeway building, similarly to what was done to African American neighborhoods in West Oakland that were targeted for mega outside construction projects that wiped out Black business ownership and Black home ownership, like in the 7th Street corridor in West Oakland. Some similar things like that were done to the Chinatown community, where you had a community where folks were sort of barely getting a foothold, barely into the middle class, and then mega construction projects came in by white decision makers and wiped out segments of Chinatown, built freeways, built other things that undermined communities. So that's part of the history that I think it's important to be aware of. But then in terms of what's going on this week in Oakland, we have something really unacceptable and deceptive going on, which is that the mayor cut the walking foot patrols from Chinatown. And those foot patrols were in the budget that was passed by council. So there was no reason to cut them, regardless of people's different positions on the level of policing. The walking Chinatown foot patrols were not something that anyone was advocating cutting. And it was part of what was passed. And then the mayor eliminated those foot patrols. And then at a press conference, blamed Council President Nikki Bass for the loss of those foot patrols that the mayor herself, in partnership with the city administrator, had done. And then the mayor's refusing to reverse it. So then we're going to have to take action, both to reverse that and to provide real community safety through our actions, including through a ballot measure to protect public safety, including through our own budget adoption, which we as a council get to do. But really to say that the people who've made these decisions that have hurt Chinatown are overwhelmingly white people, and it is an intentional distraction to pit communities against each other to try to blame that on somebody else.
I think that is so well said. And that's why it's so important to have our historians online and telling us about the council procedures and the administrative decisions that have truly impacted our budgets and public safety. Because these cuts started being made in December of last year, right? And I don't think that the public is really clear on that, because I keep seeing on the news that city leadership, which is vague, it's another one of those non-precise words, city leadership made these cuts. And the fact that our mayor went and on the news and said, you know, she turned and pointed at Council President Bass and said, had you made cuts like you wanted to last year, then these patrols would have been cut a long time ago and people would have not been safe before. I'm just like, what are we saying right now? What bizarro world are we living in right now? And I want to also be clear for folks that responding to attacks is not the same as attacking, right? So when we are attacked and have to defend ourselves in the media, in city council meetings, and wherever, it's not the same as being attacked. So self-defense and defending a position is not the same as being the aggressor. And we are being aggressed upon right now. First and foremost, through the press conference that happened with our council president and vice mayor, and these budgetary actions that are being taken that usurp our authority by the mayor and the city administrator. And I think they are super fearful of a progressive majority in the city of Oakland, because we are challenging the status quo. We are changing things to make sure that people are safe, that people have access to housing, that people are taxed fairly. And that makes a lot of people nervous. So you're absolutely right, Vice Mayor Kaplan. Like, this is a distraction. This is a distraction from the fact that there are real public safety concerns inside of our police department, with officers that go to Washington, D.C. to participate in a coup and make racist Facebook pages and other things, and there's no accountability. That story just disappeared. And the fact that there's so much money that goes into our police budgets that's not accounted for. So I want to be clear that we want everyone to be safe, and we don't only view safety and people's physical safety by making sure that there are patrols or whatever. Safety is having access to housing, good jobs, education, good food, clean air and soil, healthcare, so many things. But when we focus on the punitive side, then we lose sight of the things that truly keep us safe. The places that are most safe are the places that have access to all of those things. And COVID and capitalism are making it difficult for everyone, but it's doubly, triply, quadruply difficult for the folks that it's been hard on since 1881. So, and even before that, let's be honest. So, but an accurate history in our public schools and in other places of education will have you thinking something other than what it is. So understand what propaganda is, because if stories in Oakland are making it to the public media and they're repeating the same talking points, it's because a press release has been sent to news agencies for people to parrot the same narrative. We have got to break that. So I also want to give an out to Libby Schaaf and say this is fixable. This is completely fixable for you. No one is, well, I don't want to speak for Oakland, but we want collectively to be able to work together, but it has to be done honestly, respectfully, and with integrity. And that's not happening right now. But people are flawed and not perfect. And if you own up to what you've done and apologize and say, you know what, I misrepresented that information, that was not accurate, we can move forward. But acting like there was no harm done, it's not okay. It's not okay. But it's not the end of the world. You can fix this, Mayor Schaaf. You can apologize to Council President Bass and work with the council who's actually trying to keep our residents safe. I just wanted to say that. I don't know.
Well, I want to really say that as well. To everyone, and certainly including Mayor Schaaf, we need all of us to be working together in this moment. You know, when Mayor Schaaf went on TV and said she had to cut the firefighters, which she admitted could result in people dying, she said it was because she couldn't figure out any other funding sources. But I have found some of our community stakeholders have suggested others. There are things we can do when we work together to make the situation better for all of us. And so I really want to join in that and reiterate and invite the mayor to be in that spirit of collaboration, as well as the other stakeholders who've come forward to say we have ideas too, that it doesn't have to be like this. And lying about who's making the cuts is outrageous in people's pain to try to get them to blame someone else. When the mayor cut those walking patrols, which is what Chinatown was having a press conference to say they were upset about, to blame someone else for that. And we have to come with solutions. And that's why I've been fighting to find the money, to get the data about the fund balances of all the funds so we can continue to work on that strategy, and to work on a ballot measure that would protect our walking patrols from cuts, that would protect our fire stations from cuts, that would fund civilian mental health and community responders and youth violence prevention, and make sure that those programs can't be cut, which were also threatened last year by this administration. They threatened to zero out funding for youth violence prevention. And so these are issues where we need to be working with all of us and being willing to be creative and proactive and find the money, take the steps, change the laws, work for systems that actually work and are effective, that can protect our community from all the different health and safety threats that people are dealing with. As well as, you know, one other thing I want to say, the administration put out a statement that said next year's budget's going to be worse too, and the year after that. That's in our hands. It doesn't have to continue to be awful if we take the steps now to fix that. Now, there were some ballot measures some that I proposed, some that Councilmember Bass and others proposed last year that would have helped this, that the administration opposed. That's part of why we're in this pickle. But it's not just that. They have been failing to fill jobs in the positions that do permit processing and zoning and construction permitting. So people think business is down because it's hard and COVID, which is absolutely true, but it's not just that. People are trying to open businesses or change businesses or move or build, and they can't get through to our permit department. So one of the things I am pushing for immediately, and it's on our March 2nd council agenda, is to unfreeze all those positions, to expedite the hiring so that next year doesn't have to be worse. We can make it easier to build housing or to reopen a business so that we can have economic opportunity for the community and tax revenue to fund vital services for the public.
Critical. See, this is what, who said that earlier? Anna? Was it Anna? This is what leadership looks like. And we are in it to win it for our residents. And I don't know, it's 5:58. Should we take some questions and comments? And let me listen, this is how I'm aging. Hold on.
Well, that's okay. I've got mine too.
Let's see if we can get some comments and questions from folks on the line. I saw some earlier. And can you say a little bit more, Councilmember Kaplan? And I want to respect your title. I've been dealing with you for many, many years.
You can call me Rebecca. You can call me Hey You. You can call me Yo There. This is not a problem.
Okay. Well, Hey You.
Public Chair Fife.
Okay. Here's a question: like, are there performance mechanisms for groups that keep getting contracts for these cities? Is there a metric for determine, like, how does one organization get $95 million in 4 years? Is there some kind of performance standard that they have to meet? And tell me, because I've been there for what, 5 weeks, I think.
That's so. Can you believe it? It's been like a month since we got sworn in together. It's a new world. So there are not consistent performance metrics for groups that get city contracts. And that's really a problem. It's something that I brought up, and I'm not the only one. Other people have brought this up before too. But I do think it's something that needs more pressure. There hasn't been a consistent system of performance metrics, and especially for groups that get contracts across different categories and different departments. So for example, the Kids First grants which fund youth programs, they have their own performance analysis just for the recipients of those grants. But if an agency goes to different city departments and gets grants for different things, there isn't tracking across. And there's whole categories that don't have performance mechanisms. And there's a specific issue going on right now where the council has been asking for over a year and a half for an audit of the homeless interventions, because there were a lot of public complaints about some of them being problematic, possibly falsifying their success data, as well as other complaints about them. So we've asked for an official audit of the homeless program, and we still haven't gotten those results yet. The city auditor is still working on that. So there's a specific example where the council asked for specific performance data and still doesn't have it. So I do think that this is a topic that needs more pressure.
Thank you. And thank you for the question. It's a great question. And I also want to give a shout out to Alexis from Hayward. I see you. Hope all is well. We also have former council member Nancy Nadell saying,
oh, hey, Nancy.
Could the public, grateful to have some progressive council members during these difficult times, could those macro folks go out with public works to homeless camps because public works staff are saying they're feeling threatened when they go to clean up the camp areas? Is that something that these folks could do? Because right now OPD is going, but there was a work stoppage for a second. But is that something that you think that macro folks could do?
I think that's a great suggestion, and we should take that back to the public works crew in terms of, their needs and requirements, and making that connection and having that conversation.
Thank you, Nancy.
And thank you, Nancy Nadell, for your incredible work. Nancy Nadell, before I was on the council, was, often the one progressive voice fighting against ridiculous things, and just want to give her some appreciation as well.
Hey, Nancy. So I also see Kit, you said you can't get in, and will I repost on my Facebook page later? Yes, I think it will automatically show up when we close this recording, which we will do in about 18 minutes. But we have another question from Fee Tran. Where can we access data on city contracts, who they are and how much they get paid? Where will we find that information, Vice Mayor?
So there is a periodic report that the administration is supposed to bring, which lists the city contracts that they have entered into. So we should check when the most recent ones were and post that out to people. But yeah, the administration does provide that in a report, usually quarterly, but because of COVID, they might have missed some of that schedule. So we should check on that.
Okay. So we will get that out through our newsletters, websites, social media. We will get that information out to you. That was a great question.
Well, and I want to say, I think the questioner was asking about contracts that have been issued so as a member of the public to track where the money's going. But there's another piece of this that I want to continue working on together, which is how the city advertises contracts that are available. So there's the public interest to know where the money's gone and what it's being used for. But there's also the question of local businesses who want to apply to do things, feeling excluded, feeling like only a small favored group of insiders gets all the contracts, and that where and how we outreach when we have contracting opportunities primarily reaches white people, primarily reaches people who are already well connected. And right. So this question about, how do people find out about contracts? One of the other things on my agenda, and I think our agenda for this term, is to really improve also how the city advertises them and outreaches them to people and businesses that would want to bid on city contracts to better reflect our community in participation in that.
That's key. That actually came up at a council meeting recently because of the disparity study that when I was on the outside, I was working with you to try to get published. So that was a long time ago. And so now we finally have that disparity report, and we have to make it make sense. We have to make it real by addressing some of the outcomes that we're seeing with our contractors and our women-owned businesses, our African-American-owned businesses, Indigenous-owned businesses not being able to access these contracts. You're absolutely right. because $1 million contract for a small organization is huge. It's huge. And oftentimes people don't know what to do, like that they're even coming up. And so what happens is once you get your foot in the door as a contractor, then I'm seeing that a lot of these contracts are just renewed and renewed. Things come back to council. I mean, they don't. That's off something I've been noticing, that the city administration will put on the agenda to approve without having to come back to council. So that's I'm going to stop that. I'm going to interrupt that process so that there can be more public input into when those things are happening. So wanted to share that. Tanya, are there any other questions? She will repost on the page. Yes. Thank you. I'm referring to the historical data and potential ethics violation. Thank you. I think you got that, Vice Mayor Kaplan. You were, yeah. And we need external research teams. We need people that are looking into things. It's not just us. And we're just a few people. We're a handful of folks inside of a very, very large system. So we need as many people doing that work as possible, working together inside, outside on how to make our city better. And accountability is one of those ways. I see a question from Brandon Dawkins. Is that memo public record? I believe that was the memo from the administrator's office.
Yes.
And it was before I was on council, correct? But yes, I think
the memo is public. And then let me see if we can post it here. Let's see. Do we have, okay, I'm putting the link. Okay, I put the link in this chat, but then that's not out to all the folks on Facebook. So Tanya, if you can see it. Oh, she's posting it in the chat already. Yes, so this is a public memo published in December by City Administrator Ed Riskin. And the link, you should now see it there on the Facebook notes as well. And it is publicly available. And that's the memo that says the administrator is the one making the cuts. It lists the cuts they're making, which included those walking foot patrols and the fire department, as well as other things. And, you know, the other thing I would say about that is please stay involved also in the work to potentially revise our Measure Z. We have a ballot measure that was passed a decade ago to fund public safety, including neighborhood walking beat officers, violence prevention programs, including youth programs and job programs, and the fire department. And so that is coming up to be renewed. And it's my goal as we renew it that we do more to support things like civilian mental health, like jobs programs and youth violence prevention. And also that we use this opportunity of going back to the voters to lock in protections to secure our safety, so that it should say the administrator can't just unilaterally cut these things like the fire services and the youth violence prevention and the foot beat patrols, and put those protections into the measure as we're revising it, so that community would know that the things we've agreed to fund through our democracy would be secured.
Yep, absolutely. And I do have to give this quote because it just made my entire day, from Rashawn Bakari Lewis, that says, "Stay loud, lady, stay hella loud." Yes, absolutely. Yep. Because in reality, if we're not doing the work that you all want us to do, there's no reason for us to be here. And just understand that it is heavy work, but many hands make light work. So the more of us doing it, the more of us paying attention and participating, the easier it's going to be for all of us. So this is good trouble. Right on, Ashe.
Amen, amen.
This is good trouble.
I was inclined to say something that might be too religious for some of our viewers and too sacrilegious for some other of our viewers. So that's probably about right, which is, you know, there was this radical socialist who led an uprising against the Roman Empire. And he was kind of denounced as a long-haired, radical, scraggly Jew. And while people may have written a song saying he was meek and mild, he in fact kicked over the tables of the money changers. And so, you know, those who get revered later for their leadership and activism were not necessarily calm and quiet in their day.
That's right. That is exactly right. So for the sacrilegious and too religious, the message is the same. It's accurate. Like you got to shake things up sometime. You really do. And especially when you're living in a world that is upside down. You gotta fix it. You gotta move it. You gotta shake it up. So here's a message from Caitlin Rose. It's a question. In regards to encampment sweeps, how is the city able to continue sweeps when there have apparently at times been orders that sweeps should not be occurring? Great question. I am not a specialist in our EMP, the encampment management plan right now. I'm trying to get up to speed on it. And oftentimes, well, I'm going to let our vice mayor kind of weigh in on this because you've been more a part of this discussion than I have. And I'm still reading all of my notes. Can you explain like how that contradiction exists?
Yes, and it can be very confusing because we tend to assume that when the city council votes for something, that's that. And yet, as we saw with this recent budget action, the administration is taking certain actions on their own. Similarly, a lot of activists and you and others helped the council pass a public lands policy a couple years ago that hasn't been being followed. And
Right.
so it is distressing when we do see conduct from the administration that does not match the directives that have been given. And I think as this new council it has been getting going, I think we're seeing more willingness to have those hard conversations about those situations.
Caitlin, is that fair? Does that answer your question? I see folks are still typing in information, typing in questions here. I feel like this is tied into the EMP and it's in progress state. So I think, Quan, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, that you're saying that being able to make these moves are because the EMP is not necessarily completely completed and that it's an in progress piece of legislation. I think that's what you're saying. I could be wrong, but weigh in the chat if I have your statement incorrect. That said, there's a lot more to do. There's a lot more.
There's absolutely a lot more to do, and I want to make sure we uplift some of the solutions that people have been fighting for. Council President Nikki Bass has been pushing for us to do rapid build, deeply affordable housing, like these new modular units that can go up much more quickly, but that are real housing with doors and windows and water and electricity. I think
Right.
it's essential that we do that. The council voted for my proposal last March that the administration should provide for the homeless to be able to stay in hotels and then send those bills to FEMA for reimbursement. That's another thing the council approved that the administration has still not implemented. At the time, FEMA was offering 75% reimbursement. And under the Biden administration, FEMA, that's the Federal Emergency Management Agency, they are now offering 100% reimbursement. And so now there's really no excuse for us to not be doing a better and more humane job with our unhoused neighbors.
Excellent points. Those are solutions, and we are pushing for real solutions. Regarding the apology, I see a comment where Nancy Nadell is saying, tell Libby you need a restorative justice process for her apology. I think that makes sense. Have a restorative justice circle. It's something that I've heard most city council members and the mayor support in the past. And I think that makes sense. It doesn't have to be punitive. We should have a restorative justice. And we need you to help call for that. And we also need other organizations who do racial justice work to call in our mayor to say why that was harmful as a white woman to use your privilege and power to engage with this woman of color, to engage with this Asian woman in the way that she was. Our mayor right now is not saying that that was problematic at all. It's problematic, number one, because it was just untrue. I think that's like not even debatable. But it was also problematic because that is the council president who's over our entire legislative body right now.
Right.
And that is also her district. And it was also just very disrespectful. And so we need to have our racial justice organizations. I know Community Ready Corps Allies and Accomplices, showing up for racial justice surge are two that I'm familiar with and work with. organizations of white people that can talk about white privilege and power and what that looks like when engaging communities of color, specifically communities that have been stereotyped as being submissive and passive, and how that engagement should be. So restorative justice makes a lot of sense. And why I was calling for an apology for the Black community is because historically, it's a position that white women have used with their power and privilege and proximity to white maleness to really just encourage violence or negative actions towards Black people. Yeah. So when I call for an apology to the Black communities, because in that moment I was like, whoa, that is exactly how white people historically have, especially white women, have been like, I'm standing up, listen to me, I'm centered, I'm a white woman, and that group is a problem. And we are going to use all of our power to make sure we bring those thugs to justice. That's what I felt in that moment, because it was almost, and someone will have to get the exact words, but to use that like type of law and order language about one individual specifically who's been known in Chinatown for months, since at least last October, November, who clearly has mental health issues, mental health challenges that has been reported to me from my folks that I organize with in Chinatown, is living homeless in Chinatown, always being under the influence of some kind of substance and like having mental health breaks. So to approach that person as like anti-Asian and engaged in hate crimes, it does not acknowledge all of the other factors that are layered inside of those dynamics. And to me, it's just like, we're going to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law this particular individual, which, please, I am not saying, and I hate that I have to give this disclaimer, that I'm not condoning the actions that have been taking place. But I'm also saying, do your homework and look at how historically these dog whistles have been used to criminalize the entire Black community, and how that's happening right now, where there's increased racial profiling on anybody Black in Chinatown. So that's why I felt triggered and was like, whoa, this is going to have a wave of consequences that really impact Black folks. So that's why I was calling for like an apology and an acknowledgement of how white women have done that specifically to Black folks, and how that has created like a ripple effect from just increased surveillance to actual lynchings. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but read Post-Traumatic Slave Disorder. Read about how white women have engaged in this type of dog whistle and created all kinds of problems. So,
well, and it's and for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, first of all, this is why Emmett Till was murdered. And this week, a young white woman in Marin reported to police that she was attacked by a strange Black man, and she gave a description, and now today has admitted that she made it all up.
This happened today?
Today, well, the incident happened a week ago, but today she admitted that it was not true. And here the police in that area were stopping every Black man, and she's now today admitted that it was not true.
That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, this has historic implications, and it is not a small thing. We're even seeing vigilantes come from all over the East Bay talking about how they are going to do certain things to Black folks. So I heard it best from Council Member Bass's office. Like, this is a tinderbox. I was quoting her in a recent news article, like, all it's going to take is one small incident and the whole thing pops off. And we don't want that here. We don't need that, and we don't want it. We do want justice and accountability, but that also means righting the historic wrongs that have created dis-ease in our communities, all of our communities, but specifically the 70% of individuals who are living homeless on our streets, who don't have access to health care or the medications that they need so they stay okay. So this is deep, y'all. It's not just, it's not surfacey. Um,
And
and
there are community programs that grassroots community have put together and are putting together that we should be supporting. And I know Council President Bass is working on that as well.
And that's why we have to follow the indigenous leadership of those areas. That is Council President's district. She has long-standing relationships with grassroots organizations who are there. I've organized with people who are in the Chinatown Coalition for years. There are people that we should be following their lead. And in fact, the Chinese Chamber asked for 3 very specific things at that press conference. And I don't think that their needs are being met. But I know specifically, in addition, the needs of our communities in West Oakland are not being met. The communities in East Oakland's needs are not being met. And so rather than stoke division and point fingers and not take responsibility for having the highest office in the city, we need to be figuring out how we come together. And I firmly believe that restorative justice is absolutely necessary so that we can move forward collectively in building trust. We talk about that. I don't, but a lot of people talk about building trust between the police and the community. But that is not an apples to apples comparison. When you have power and privilege, and especially the ability to take a life or put things in motion that can take a life, then your weight in that conversation and equation is a little heavier than just your average person. So when you're rebuilding trust because it's been broken, because you've been the individual or organization that has broken that trust, then it is incumbent upon you to make that right. It is incumbent upon the folks in the power position to start the process on transformation and healing. So that we really need to put that up front, because everyone else is directly impacted. And granted, we are going to find solutions in our communities, and we're going to move forward, apology or not. But apologizing is just the right thing to do, because then it sets in motion the next steps of how we actually work together and build a city that, where we all can be safe.
Well, I also really want to appreciate you naming this specifically as a restorative justice process that's needed, because naming it as restorative justice is a way of saying there was a wrong and it can be righted in a non-punitive way. And since restorative justice is something that we in Oakland have been encouraging in our youth, in our school system, right, for several years now, we've been fighting for these programs to be included in our schools. So I think then we have a responsibility to do no less than what is being taught and encouraged. And I would love to use the restorative justice process for leadership situations also, like this one.
So thank you, former council member Nancy Nadell, for dropping that in the chat. You are absolutely right. And I appreciate you lifting that up as a resolution, or as a potential resolution. I see Zach Norris saying, indeed, restorative justice and transformative justice has to take into account power. We've got to. A lot of, even though we're not powerless, the city council and the majority of the city council is calling for some type of accountability. And listen, I'm not just saying that for the mayor. I'm not perfect. I know I'm going to mess up. I've been messing up. I'm learning. So I submit proactively to systems of restorative justice and accountability when I need to be called in. So y'all remember that I'm saying it here. I'm not always going to be right. I'm going to mess up. I'm not perfect. I'm not trying to be. And so if I'm out of line and I need to be called in, call me in. I will sit in circle to heal whatever needs to be fixed. So Madam Mayor, I'm saying I will be held accountable to the very same thing. And Vice Mayor Kaplan is absolutely correct. We're advocating for this in our public school system. We're advocating for our young people to use these types of processes. We're advocating for it in our criminal justice system. And so, yeah, why would it be any different for us? Why would we not hold ourselves to the same account? And we are coming up on time, Vice Mayor Kaplan. So do you have any announcements you would like to make, or anything that you want to share with folks?
Oh, thank you. Well, this has been such a pleasure. So do save the date for the March 8th Finance Committee, where we will be fighting for funding for these basic public needs that the mayor and administrator are cutting, and to provide fundamentally for the true safety and support for the economic opportunity as well for our communities. And stay in touch. The email address for our council office is atlarge@oaklandnet.com. That's ATLARGE, @large@oaklandnet.com. And if you want to work with us on the ballot measure to secure our safety and the safety funding, you can contact us and let us know that as well. So we'll make sure to include your interest and your ideas in that work. And my council member, and our public safety chair, Carol Fife. It is such a pleasure to serve with you. You are doing amazing, and thank you for this as well.
Oh, of course. As I've said many times in the last 5 weeks, this is like drinking from a fire hose. And for everyone that's trying to reach out to me, please stay diligent. I am completely booked up. I had no idea that there would be such an influx of requests to meet with our office, to talk to us, to work on things. I am so elated that there's so much support and interest in what we're trying to build, and the continuation of this movement, because that is what's driving all of our actions, is movement energy, and we're going to keep it up. We will get to you. We will do everything in our power. If you can't meet with me, Tanya Love, my chief of staff, is available. Justin Tombolesi is available. We got Red on deck. And we're growing out our volunteer and internship program, as well as potential folks that are coming on from different colleges throughout the Bay who want to support. So just keep on hitting us up. Keep on responding to us. I'm on Twitter at Carol_Fife. You can hit me up there. I think that's probably where I respond to most comments. But I also wanted to give some announcements about things that are coming up. Is today Wednesday? Yeah. So tomorrow, Thursday at 5:30 p.m., myself and Field Marshal Turha Ak will be in conversation with Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. and Mother Comrade Akua and Jerry to discuss the life of Chairman Fred Hampton, the chairperson of the Chicago Black Panther Party, the largest chapter in the country. There's a deep relationship between Oakland and Chicago, and we will be discussing their life as organizers and activists, as well as the life of Chairman Fred Hampton and the fight to save the Hampton House. The movie is coming out this Friday, Judas and the Black Messiah. It was produced by Ryan Coogler, Oakland's own, as well as Shaka King. And so we'll be doing a premiere about that, but we're going to do a talk with the family and our revolutionary organizers and folks tomorrow at 5:30, I believe is the time. And this Saturday, we're also doing, for folks who want to lift up some of the things that are happening in our communities, specifically the Black community, please email me. We don't have press conferences. Our pain and our death often goes under the radar. So if you want to come together and talk about that, please email us at info@carolfife.org. That's CARROLLFIFE.org, and hit us up. We want to hear about your experiences in Flatlands communities, not just my district, but across the city, because we need to take care of us and find solutions to our pain as well, and talk about some of the things that often go undiscussed. So hit me up, because we're talking about coming together in recognition of Black History Month and how we're going to change Black futures this Saturday at 1:30 p.m. So hit us up at info@carolfife.org. And yeah, if you want to let me know some stuff, hit me up on Twitter. I'm there. I have insomnia most nights. So just check us out and keep tuning in, keep paying attention, keep staying involved, and think critically. And yeah, let's make history together. Thank you, everybody, for coming out.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
For Tran, I see that you said the Eventbrite isn't working. It might be because we've hit our ceiling, but I'll check that. I'll check into that and put a message out through my Twitter page today. So thank you for that. We're going to look into it. Thank you, Vice Mayor Kaplan, for everything, for your leadership, for finding this $10 million for the city of Oakland, for all of the legislation that we have coming on the pike, and everything that we're building for in the future. Thank you so much. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Good evening.
Bye, everybody. Town Biz.